Well, good morning. I'm here with Doug to talk about ransomware, and it is January 9, 2024.
And Sam, do you know what today is? The grand opening of, in Las Vegas, Nevada,
I do not know.
every year, CES
Oh, yes.
2024.
I heard about it on another podcast, but of course, I've never gone, I've never paid any attention, so it didn't stick in my mind.
Yeah, so here we go. We're going to see all the new products that are coming out for 2024, and I have a couple of those to share with you.
Oh, good. Okay.
But
Glad somebody.
let's hear what story do you have? What do you want to share
Well,
first?
the first one was kind of predictable, but sort of horrible. TechCrunch has it. 23andMe got hacked a while ago, but they got
Right?
hacked by credential stuffing, which means people reused the same password on another site, which got hacked. So 23andMe, in their kindness, has sent an email to the victim saying, okay, it's your fault. It's not our fault. Um, it's your own fault that you got hacked by choosing a bad password. And of course, the other real problem is there were only 14,000 people who used the same password, but 23andMe had this option to share your code with all your genetic relatives so that anybody with similar DNA would be able to see your code. And that's how they actually got millions of them, 7 million victims from the 14,000 by using that feature. And yet 23andMe sees none of this as their fault. They didn't require unique passwords. They didn't require passwords that weren't in known public dumps. They didn't change passwords even. So it's pretty appalling. A bunch of people
So,
do terrible things after they get hacked, and this is another example of it.
yeah, nice PR, right? So let's go over this hack again.
Yeah. Oh,
So you had people,
it's
you
credentials.
had a customer. You had a customer like I'm a 23andMe customer,
Yeah.
and I used a password that is insecure and fairly common.
Well, not even necessarily, but just the same password you used on another site.
So I have a Gmail account and I use the
Right.
same
And then
password.
that other site gets hacked and people dump the passwords. So now they
I
just
mean,
keep the stolen passwords for those accounts on all the different services they can find until they get in. That's credential stuffing.
yeah, okay, got it.
And so it's really the main problem is password reuse, but this typically goes along with poor passwords.
Yeah, yeah, okay. So then what happened is if my DNA is
Yeah.
somewhat similar to yours,
Yeah.
then I have access to your DNA
Apparently
or to
so.
your profile.
Apparently so. If people opt in, or people are in this feature, which it sounds like it probably was opt in by default, I'm not sure, to share your information with your genetic relatives. But of course, why were you going to 23andMe anyway, except for that kind of information? It seems to me
Yeah.
about the only possible value of the thing is highly dubious medical recommendations and the opportunity to find long lost relatives. I don't know why. Oh, the other thing is to find out that you're 1% American Indian or something. But I don't know why anybody uses any of these services. And the experts I've seen interrogated say they're like getting a tarot card reading or tea leaves. You shouldn't waste your time with them.
Well, they are somewhat inaccurate. And just a little clarification, your
Yeah.
entire genome is not being read.
It
They're
is?
markers. No, it is not. They
Okay.
have markers that are looking in specific areas of your genome. But
Yeah. And by the
you
way,
know who else?
there will come a time in the future when you can actually get valuable medical information this way, but not yet. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, we're getting close. But you know who else has used it successfully?
No?
Is law
Yeah,
enforcement to identify Golden State Killer.
that's right. And that's why if any of your relatives have used it, then law enforcement can get at it sooner or later.
Yeah, and I'm not sure, but I think law enforcement has the CODIS database, which is completely different. That's if you're a criminal and you've been convicted of a crime. The CODIS database has different markers than what 23andMe is using and the other genetic testing services. So Golden State Killer was not able to be located from the CODIS database. They had to go through a relatives database,
Yeah.
meaning 23andMe, and I'm not sure it was 23andMe,
I think it was.
Ancestry.com, one of the other services.
Oh, it might have been, yeah. It,
Yeah.
it's a horrible exposure of privacy. Not a wise thing to participate in these services.
Yeah. And I think the last ruling that I heard is law enforcement are not able to use 23andMe and other genetic testing services.
Yeah,
Or if they can, they need a court order.
that
And
would
a
make
lot
some sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and along with this, this is relatively new technology. It's been out for a couple of years, but there's now starting to use phenotype to identify people. And a phenotype is something that you are that's visible really externally, like if you have red hair or if you have green eyes. And they're able now to kind of use your genetic code to solve crimes, not to specifically identify somebody, but to rule people out.
Well, that makes more sense.
Yeah, yeah. But it can, if you have a unique characteristic, like red hair, for example,
Hmm?
that's not that common. That's something that can be used to kind of identify everybody who has red hair or green eyes, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but that's been used to identify people in
Yeah.
profiling. And here we go back into the profiling issue.
Yep. All right. What have you got?
So, again, CES is starting. I got a couple stories here. What do you think is going to be the top item that everybody's going to be selling at CES this year?
AI.
Yeah, AI and Chat GPT.
Yeah.
Look for every product, your iron, your
Yeah.
TV,
Yeah.
right? So we'll see about that. So again, today it's just starting and it's probably opening right about now. So we'll wait to see what products are coming out of that, what we hear. But I'd argue that CES probably is not that relevant anymore. You know, the big shows have pretty much gone. You got companies like Apple, Microsoft, Google, Salesforce. They have their own conference. They'd rather throw their own event that's focused specifically on their products.
Yeah.
And CES is always been for consumers, but there's been a lot of technology that's used by industry companies, corporate America. But for the most part, it's consumer oriented.
Yeah. And I've never had anything much to do with that consumer-oriented stuff, not in decades. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
whenever
It's
the worst thing
games.
is when I visit somebody and they expect me to like set up their TV or something, it's like an all-day project for me to try to figure out what this weird stuff is and what cables it needs and stuff.
Yeah, well, it's all supposed to be simplified. We just go to one cable, Ethernet, and we're done.
But now
We'll
it's
see.
USB-C apparently. It's supposed to be
Yeah, yeah.
but of course,
USB-C.
but of course, when I go to somebody's house, nobody has all new stuff. They've got random stuff over the last 2 decades that won't work together,
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
which is no different than computers for that reason.
Yeah. But you know what else is coming out of this is Web 3.0. So do you know much about Web
That
3.0?
was supposed to be the blockchain oriented web, distributed. That's what they talked about, and everything was supposed to be on the blockchain with NFTs is what I hear about in Web 3.0.
Yeah, well, look at a lot of PR for Web 3.0
Yeah.
and a lot of hype because you got venture capitalists that have a lot of money that
Yeah,
are trying to get you involved and to buy into Web 3.0 because it offers. Yeah, right.
that was the
Exactly.
thing. That was the whole thing about NFTs and blockchain and stuff. It's an interesting cryptographic trick, but exactly what is the point?
Right. But spend money because we need
Yeah.
those VCs need your money. Buy early, buy often, buy lots.
Well, yeah. All right.
But I got a related story to that.
All right.
And that is, let me just look at my notes here. Do you know who Logan Paul is?
I don't think so.
Have you ever heard of Crypto Zoo?
I don't think so. It's similar.
Okay. So this comes back to NFTs. And Logan Paul sold a number of NFTs and became, and I'm not exactly sure who Logan Paul is, other than somebody that sold NFTs. And I'm not sure if there were the crypto cats or the crypto monkeys. It
Right.
was one of those. Those characters were going to be used in a game, and I don't believe the game was ever created.
I remember the monkeys. The apes, bored apes. That was the big one.
Yeah, so I'm not exactly sure which one it is, but Logan has decided you know, if you don't sue me, I'll give you your money back.
That's how it
So
used to
he
work. And I
has he
suppose,
has 2.3 he made $2.3 million off of
yeah.
these NFTs that he's willing to give back to people on the condition that you don't sue him.
Well, that's how it
That,
usually works. That's how a settlement works.
well, you want to talk about settlements? I got another story. But anyway, Logan Paul's giving money back if you bought one of his NFTs.
Oh, good.
Apple settlement is coming out right now. So this was a class action lawsuit known as Battery Gate that affected Apple iPhones 6, 7, first version SE.
Oh, yeah.
And this was, do
I
you
mean,
remember that?
after a couple of years, it would slow down to supposedly preserve the battery or something.
Yeah, so the class action lawsuit is that Apple intentionally degraded performance.
Yeah.
And the question that comes back and forth is, was it really intentional to do that? And I think the answer is no. What they were trying to do is, because if you've had an iPhone, you know that if you're in the middle of a call, the battery goes dead, boom, it shuts off, right? When there's at a certain point, your iPhone will shut off when the battery is at a low level.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is understandable. And what Apple did is to kind of prolong that performance, prolong battery life, they slowed down processing. And so instead of having your phone shut off arbitrarily
Yeah.
3/4 through the day, maybe they could extend it by slowing down the processor and
Right.
you get a full day's battery life out of it. There was no option or feature to turn it on or off. That was added later.
Yeah.
But any idea what the payoff is?
I don't know. I never really understood exactly what the damages were.
Well, the damages were that Apple, from what I understand, intentionally did this so that you'd buy a new iPhone.
All right.
Okay.
Even that would not be illegal, I suppose. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, a class action lawsuit, it was Apple was found at fault. So I believe they're paying a $6 million fine plus payouts to anybody, but you already had to have filed to be part of the class action lawsuit. Again, 6, 7, first version of SE and all the SE phones.
Yeah.
And the payout, normally you get a few dollars here or there, but Apple actually in this lawsuit, there's some money behind this. And it's $92,
Hmm.
which isn't a lot of money, but it's a fair amount.
That's more than
And
usual. I used to do those lawsuits. That's a pretty good payout.
yeah, that's not a bad payout. So if you bought a couple of these phones, if you went with each generation, people are getting up to about $1,000.
I,
So
yeah.
free iPhone, right? If you did
I-
this. But again, you had to have filed several years ago.
yeah. Yeah.
All right, Sam, what do you have?
I got a couple about AI that are pretty good. National Institute of Standards has come out and said
Yes.
that anybody that claims they're selling secure AI is lying, and they have an interesting alignment of AI security risks that I thought might turn out to be valuable. They claim there are four types of security risks. There are evasion, poisoning, privacy, and abuse. And evasion and poisoning are the two I knew about. Evasion is where you modify uh, an instance that the AI attempts to classify, so it misclassifies them, and that's why people wear these like funny baseball caps or T-shirts to make facial recognition fail. And poisoning is where you alter the training data so the AI learns bad habits. Privacy, of course, is where you type the information into the AI and that information leaks out inappropriately to either the training data or query data coming in. And abuse are where you trick the AI into violating its security policy, like telling you how to make a bomb or writing malware or something. And what they say, without explaining it very well, at least in this article, is that if you increase defense against one of these attacks, you weaken it against the other. So it's sort of like the CIA triad of normal security. And I'm not sure if that'll hold up under inspection, but it is an interesting categorization of the vulnerabilities. And they say you can't be good at all these things at once. So anybody that claims to be secure is misleading you. And that may
Yeah.
be true, although I think the current generation of large language models is trying to fix this by having layers of AI. They have the first one, and then they have another one, look at the output of that one and decide if it appears to have fallen into one of these traps. So I think with a multi-layer response, they may be able to improve them, but basically that's the same thing. You end up making it more and more expensive to get a higher score on all these things, which is the same thing as the CIA triad, confidentiality,
Yeah,
integrity, and availability. You can have a high level of all three if you're willing to pay a high amount of money.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
But anyway, I thought it was interesting and certainly true that all the AIs currently in use aren't very safe, which is why companies like Google that had this years ago did not release it because it had serious security flaws. And it was
right.
OpenAI that embarrassed them into it by just dumping out something that a more responsible company probably would have called like a beta test.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And there's another one, which is actually one I hadn't thought of. The developers of curl are complaining, and his cynical title is "The I in LLM stands for intelligence," because people send fake bug reports to try to get the bug bounty. And it used to be easy to scan them, to eliminate them because they'd be poorly written. Now they use LLMs to randomly generate bug reports that are just garbage and flood everybody with them. And they have to waste a lot of time at developers reading through these things that are often written in good English and look plausible on the surface until you dig down and find out that they're nonsense. And they're just hoping to win, like a bug bounty with this junk. So it's one example of the flood of AI generated spam that's coming out.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and I hadn't thought of that one, but you
Interesting.
certainly could tell it just, look at this code, find a bug in it and write a bug vulnerability report. And the AI will do that and it will look superficially okay. It won't be until you actually read through it that you'll realize it doesn't make any sense.
But again, it's a waste of human resources.
It is. So the machine gives humans a bunch of extra work to do, just the opposite of
Yeah,
what we wanted out of our computers.
yeah, yeah, exactly. That 35-hour work week that computers are supposed to give us.
Yes, and I remember studies said people are more stressed than ever because their boss can call them at home on the smartphone, and now they're working more hours than ever. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, yeah. What have you got?
Do you have another one, Sam?
Oh, I do.
I'll leave my last. I have one more
Oh,
we'll save for
okay.
the end.
Well,
How's
the other
that?
one I've got here is I got two more. One which I thought was the interesting. We hear people talk about ransomware and say we don't really know if it's killed anybody. So these guys analyzed how much disruption in procedures at hospitals was caused by ransomware and tried to estimate how many people have in fact been killed by ransomware. And they found a total of, I think, 40 or 50 people they estimate have been killed in the last several years by ransomware. So, it didn't prove it. You can't make this is a problem when you go for lawsuits. They didn't find the smoking gun. This ransomware caused this patient to die, but they showed that delay causes a higher rate of mortality in heart patients. And because of this, they could serve less patients and it took longer. And therefore, statistically, the ransomware can be blamed for a certain number of deaths. And I just thought this would be interesting for management types that want to motivate their board to be more secure, is that we do have an authoritative statement making a reasonable estimate of how many human lives have already been lost from ransomware.
Yeah, boy, that's kind of an interesting one because we do know of stories that I brought up previously on sexploitation, where teenagers are
Oh,
actually
yes.
taking their life.
Oh, yes.
So,
And that a one-to-one targeted attack, you can
yeah,
absolutely show it kills people. But these generic virus type attacks,
I
people,
see.
do they
I
really
see.
kill people? And of course, for example, I would think if snarling up traffic with red lights, that would kill people. Bringing down phone lines would kill people. All these things will kill people, but it's hard to prove that you kill one
Right,
person.
right.
And
Yeah, yeah.
and the last one is just kind of a stunt. They tried to make a cyborg computer. It grew human brain cells from stem cells in a jar, and then connected it to a computer and made a hybrid device that was part human brain cells and part computers, and trained it to do a relatively simple speech recognition task up to 78% accuracy. So this doesn't accomplish much of anything except to show that you can. It's the beginning of hybrid, biological and silicon computers integrated together. So we're moving in the direction of creating the Borg here, or Data or something from Star Trek.
So again, in a petri dish, you grow some brain cells, some
Yeah.
neurons,
Then you
and you connect those
to
electronically
yeah,
to some circuitry, integrated circuits
yeah.
processor. And
Then you train it to
what's
do a task. you somehow give it feedback. And
So what's the interface? Do you know?
no, they've University of Indiana Bloomington did it, and
Yeah.
they deliver electric pulses to it and record its corresponding neural activity. And so the neurons learn. They then trained an AI to predict which person was speaking based on the neural activity of the brain. So this is kind of like the implants that try to make up for people who have motor problems.
And so what they're able to do is detect speech, but not the words of the speech, but the person who's speaking.
Right, which is just a simpler task. And they only
Yeah,
got
yeah.
8% accuracy, which is not too exciting. So I think all the learning actually happened in the brain cells, and they just read it out with computer. But I think the computer also had to use AI to interpret the signal coming out of the brain cells. So this is not that different than these medical implants that
Right,
uh,
right.
but but the only thing is it's all totally artificial. So they are growing brains in a jar and then using them to do thinking. So it's the first step towards a lot of science fiction dystopias, you know.
Yeah, yeah. All right.
Yeah. No, no
So
big deal, really.
so you probably have never heard of Nicholas Vert.
No?
Nope. So Nicholas Vert passed away on the 1st of January, on New Year's Day. And he is somewhat famous in the history of computers that he came up with Pascal
Oh, okay.
and several other programming languages. So as we age and we get to another year, we've got people that are pioneers in the field of computers that are no longer with us. So he's one of those people that maybe it's time we start recognizing these people that were pioneers that brought us to where we are today.
Yeah.
So I just thought I'd share that one with you.
All right. Fair enough. All right.
That's all I have, unless you have another one.
No, I think that's it for this one. So that's the end of this one, and we'll have another one of these on Friday.
Very good. We'll see you then.